Welcome to Two Track and Tarmac, a podcast dedicated to the adventure motorcycle rider, the rider who frequents both the street and the trails, on the quest to answer the ever-burning question, I wonder where that road goes. I'm your host, Cassie Meyer. I operate and coach at Clearmoto Motorcycle Rider Training. I've been a professional motorcycle coach since 2019. My goal with this podcast is to bring a female's perspective to adventure riding, the motorcycle community, and the industry. The views and opinions expressed on Two Track and Tarmac are those of the talent and guests alone and may not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of any organization. The content provided is for informational and entertainment purposes only. We will discuss motorcycle-related topics, which may include riding techniques and suggestions. Two Track and Tarmac is not responsible for any injuries, damages, or losses that you may experience when acting on your own. In this episode, I want to talk all about motorcycle crashes, the most common causes for crashes, and some of the things that you can do to prevent being in a crash. I think what's really important is to understand that there is a difference between a crash and an accident. Most of the time, you're going to be in a crash. Accidents are truly an accident. They were unintentional. But some of the things that I'm going to be talking about in this list are absolutely preventable, either by keeping yourself safe out on the roads or just choosing not even to get on your motorcycle, or for drivers to not get in their cars. Now, I have a list of the top 11 most common causes for motorcycle crashes. Some of these are going to be what happens because car drivers. Some of them are going to be what happens because of motorcyclists. However, I want you to really consider you are responsible for you. You have made the choice to go out into traffic on a motorcycle. Nobody else is responsible for you. Nobody else is going to look out for your safety. Now, sure, when I'm out driving and I see a motorcyclist, I recognize that they're a motorcyclist, but I recognize that and I respect that because I am a motorcyclist. Motorcyclists only make up 3% of all registered vehicles in the United States. That's a pretty small number. There aren't very many of us, and so we don't get seen out on the road very often, and we're not expected out on the road very often, which can lead to some of the reasons why these crashes happen in the first place. I want to start this whole list off with what I think is the most important and the most critical part of really understanding what you need to do to protect yourself as a motorcyclist out in traffic. And that is your inexperience and or your inadequate training. So I'm going to be very blunt in saying that your 2.5 days worth of training so that you could get your motorcycle endorsement is not adequate training. And it is not going to prepare you to operate a motorcycle in traffic. Now, you might have been driving a car for a lot of years before you end up riding a motorcycle in traffic. And you might think, oh, I know how traffic works. I can do this. This is fine. It's not the same game. It's a very different experience being on a motorcycle than it is being in a car. Motorcycles operate differently. We have handlebars. We have a foot brake at our rear brake's at our foot. Our front brake is at our hand. Our clutch is in our hand. Our throttle is in our hand. There's so much more going on. I mean, just to mention that it's a manual transmission. Sure, there are motorcycles and scooters out there that are automatic. However, operating a manual transmission vehicle, be it a car or a motorcycle, takes a little bit more consideration and more thought than driving an automatic vehicle. So 2.5 days does not prepare you for being out on the roads. If you can find someone who is a seasoned rider and they're willing to help teach you how to ride safely out on the roads, or if you can find a coach who can either give you more information or ideally can ride with you out on the streets, that is going to be your best bet for helping you get the proper training so that you know what to do in traffic. For example, because I am a coach, I've seen this time and time again. We might be getting really proficient and you might be really good at doing the exercises that I'm asking you to do in a parking lot. But as soon as I ask you to make that same kind of turn in traffic, all of a sudden you can't do it. It's like taking 1, 2, or sometimes 3 steps back from what you were capable of doing in a parking lot. You add traffic and you add a completely new layer, and you're also adding risk when you go into traffic. So your inexperience and your inadequate training both can lead to having a motorcycle crash. Now, some of the other things that we're going to talk about are going to be drivers. They're also going to be motorcycle related. Some of them are both. And I would like to really point out, again, your responsibility as a motorcyclist and how you can help prevent being in a collision. So the first thing on this list, and just note that this list has no real rhyme or reason. It's not organized in like most common to least common. It's just the top 10 most common causes for crashes. And I just mentioned the 11th one, which is actually your inexperienced or your inadequate training as a rider. So this first one here is going to be distracted driving. And that's going to be for both car drivers and motorcyclists. I hear it time and time again. I would ride a motorcycle, but I'm afraid of everybody else. The next time you drive, I want you to really pay attention to how many times you get distracted. Driving a car is so much easier than operating and riding a motorcycle. It's easy to get distracted, and we can get distracted on our motorcycles as well. But let me focus on the cars real quick. It can be challenging to know if someone is distracted. It's obvious when you drive past someone and you see them looking down at their cell phone or looking away and talking to somebody. It can be really challenging, however, to know if maybe they're daydreaming or they're thinking about a really hard conversation they have to have when they get home. Those can all lead to being a distracted rider, not seeing the roadway in front of us. We have all been distracted drivers. As far as being a motorcyclist, you have to really pay attention to what's going on around you. Staying out of people's blind spots and staying out of potential striking zones is going to help prevent being in a collision with someone who's distracted. Now, as a motorcyclist, we can get distracted as well. One of my personal motorcycle crashes happened because I was distracted. I was daydreaming, and before I knew it, I was in a curve, and I was a combination of an inexperienced rider as well as being distracted. I was not prepared to make that turn, and I decided to just go straight off the road. Of course, as soon as I hit the gravel, my bike went out and I slid down the road a little bit. I wasn't hurt, and my bike just took a little bit of damage, but I was distracted, and that's the truth of it. And there was no other reason for that crash to have happened other than I just wasn't paying attention. So staying sharp takes energy, and it's a lot of work to be aware of your surroundings and keep your head on a swivel. But if you're going to ride a motorcycle, you have to understand that you are at a higher risk of having injury or potentially even dying on a motorcycle. So you really have to know what is going on around you. So the next thing that causes motorcycle crashes is going to be a lack of visibility. And I think that also is coupled with a lack of awareness. Motorcyclists only make up 3% of all registered vehicles in the United States. So we are not that common. And if you're someone who doesn't ride a motorcycle, when you're driving, you're not looking for motorcycles. We've all experienced it too, where we're not even expecting a pedestrian to walk across the crosswalk. And when they do, we're surprised by it. So motorcyclists can cause that same kind of surprise when we're out in traffic as well. But there are a couple of things that we can do as far as visibility. What we cannot do is make other people responsible for seeing us. We have to be responsible for letting them see us, making ourselves more apparent out on the road. So a couple things that you can do is going to be the color that you choose to wear when you're riding your motorcycle. If you're going to wear all black and your motorcycle is all black, just know the asphalt is black and you might just blend into everything. You can choose to wear brighter colors if you want to. One of the things that I actually like to do is just wear a white helmet. Now they have high vis yellow as well, and that's a pretty good color too. You can have either a high vis jacket, you can even have a high vis yellow helmet. But I find that just having that white helmet can be bright enough and enough of a contrast against all of the dark asphalt around me. Another thing that you can do is make the motorcycle more visible. The headlight, if it's not bright enough, can sometimes get missed. And it also depends on the angle at which maybe someone might be seeing your motorcycle. It's a really easy fix, and you can find a ton of inexpensive aftermarket options, is to get some auxiliary lights. And what you want to do with those second lights are going to be triangulate from the headlight. So your headlight's at the very top of that triangle, and based on the way that your motorcycle is shaped, but you want to try to put each of those auxiliary lights down and a little bit off center from where the headlight is. That triangular shape with the lights helps other road users see you. And because it looks unusual and it doesn't look like any lights that come on a car, you're going to be more easily recognizable. And people are going to say, that's probably a motorcycle. You can do a similar thing with your tail light as well. You can buy an aftermarket system that has an extra light that's actually on like a license plate frame, for example. And when you put your brakes on, that additional light bar illuminates, giving you just a little extra visibility from behind as well. And of course, the last thing that you can do is keep yourself out of blind spots. Do not put yourself in a position where nobody can see you. We've all had it happen to us when we're driving our own cars and you have a full-size vehicle that's in your blind spot. You just didn't see them. Imagine taking a motorcycle, which is significantly smaller, and putting that in the blind spot. Stay out of those blind spots. You're going to be better off either backing off from that vehicle so that you are in a position where maybe you can see their face in their mirrors, or you need to move past that vehicle. And if you're going to move past them, make sure that you move far enough ahead as well, because sometimes they just don't even see you when you're in front of them. If you can get it through your mind that motorcycles are invisible and you ride as though you're invisible and you're constantly riding to try to make yourself visible, that is going to help a lot in preventing a collision. One last thing I like to do to help my visibility is move. I can either move my motorcycle or I can actually move my limbs. It helps again to kind of break up some of that monotony. Cars, they stay pretty stationary for the most part, but with a motorcycle, and because you don't have doors around you, people can see your body. Move your arms, do an intentional head turn, make your bike kind of move back and forth in the lane so that your headlights and your taillights also move. This can help a lot in letting people know that you are there. Now, this next thing is a failure to yield. And I really truly believe that a lot of that failure to yield couples with a lack of visibility. If a car just doesn't know you're there or doesn't expect you to be there, they might just move into your lane or pull out in front of you or whatever the case may be and just are not yielding to you. Now, this doesn't mean that being a motorcyclist means that everyone is going to yield to you. You're not a tractor. You're still a vehicle on the roadway. And sometimes, yes, vehicles have to yield to you based on the position that you're in traffic. They might not yield to you because they just don't see you. Now, there could also be a lack of respect, or maybe they're frustrated and they're taking it out on you, because motorcyclists are just never going to win against a car, ever. It's like taking a knife to a gunfight. Just, if that's the case and the car is going to move, you need to be prepared to adjust the way that you're riding so that they can just take over your lane or they can move out in front of you or whatever. I've had people cut me off and they had no idea I was there. None whatsoever. I just went right around them, and they just are totally glazed over, right? And so that could be also distracted driving. A lot of these things are going to kind of couple together and kind of compound. So a failure to yield can be distracted driving or a lack of visibility on the motorcyclist part that you just can't see. So what you can do, again, similar to the other two, is stay out of those blind spots, stay out of those striking zones, keep your head on a swivel, have the experience and the knowledge and the ability to be able to change the way that you're riding to adjust for the situation that you're in so that you can potentially prevent being in any kind of collision. Now, these next few are really going to compound together, and this one here is absolutely the responsibility of the person operating either the car or the motorcycle. And that's going to be speeding and reckless driving or riding. We have all experienced driving along. It's usually on the interstate, driving along on the interstate, and you check your mirrors. Everything's looking good. You're not intending to move anywhere. You're just, doing the flow where you're looking forward, you're looking back, you're looking forward, you're looking back. Everything looks great. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, a car or a motorcycle comes flying past you. And it surprises you. It startles you. That person who is speeding is not in a position to be able to have the time or the space to stop or slow down. And so if someone moves unexpectedly, or in the case of like a motorcyclist, like all of a sudden someone's driving really fast and a motorcyclist just appears, because that's what we do. We just appear out of places because we can so easily hide behind things. That speeding vehicle is not going to have the time or the space to be able to stop. So if you see someone who's speeding, give them space, let them do their thing, like get out of their way. If you're the one speeding, you have to understand the risks that you're taking, especially as a motorcyclist. Again, you are not going to win that battle. You hit something like a car or a median, anything like that, it's typically not going to end well. So roads are designed and engineers design them with the speed limits intentionally based on how you can ride in those situations with the most safety. So if you speed, that is absolutely on you, and you have to understand the risks that you're taking and the probability of having a crash if you're going too fast. Also let you know, it takes a lot longer for a motorcycle to stop in comparison to a car. And the reason for that, even though a car is heavier, is the car gets all four brakes. The system's going to help with that braking so that it's all equal and it's efficient. Motorcycles have two brakes, and each of them operates differently. And if you don't have the experience or the training to know how to stop, it's not going to go well for you. You have to understand how the front brake works. You have to understand how the rear brake works. You have to understand how braking works. And if you don't know how that works and you don't know how to use it, well, you're not going to be stopping on your own accord. You are going to be stopping when you hit something. And along with speeding, unsafe lane changes, they kind of go hand in hand. Now, an unsafe lane change can happen anywhere, anytime, any speed. But again, I want to go back to that picture that I've painted, that you're driving along, minding your own business, and someone just flies past you. Well, when you checked your mirrors, they might have been back there. You just didn't see them because they were 3 lanes over and they've done a bunch of unsafe lane changes. And all of a sudden, phew, they go right past you. An unsafe lane change can be anything like not using your blinkers, moving rapidly, taking over multiple lanes in one fell swoop. Motorcyclists and cars can do this alike. And a car can absolutely take you out in this regard because, again, they might not see you. And if all of a sudden they need to take 3 lanes and you just happen to be there, then that sucks. But if you can keep your head on a swivel and look around and you see that happening, you need to make a decision as to whether or not you're going to slow down or you're going to try to get out of the way. I would recommend just slowing down and letting them do their thing. If you're the one doing unsafe lane changes, people don't know what you're doing. You're unpredictable. This is true for a car too. They're unpredictable. We have no idea where they're going. And then you add unsafe lane changes to a lack of visibility. And again, you're just going to appear all of a sudden. And if someone's ready to make their own lane change and you're flying through there and they just happen to move in front of you and you collide with them, well, that's also your responsibility as a motorcyclist. If you're going to do unsafe and reckless riding, that's on nobody but yourself. Now, another thing that is really common for having these collisions is lane splitting. I want to point out there's one state in all of the United States that allows lane splitting. And you guessed it, it's California. California is the only state that legally allows lane splitting. Every other state, all 49 of them, do not legally allow lane splitting. So no wonder that this is a common cause for crashes. If people are not expecting motorcycles, and they're certainly not expecting you to be splitting the lanes, meaning you're riding down the dashed lines that separate each of the travel lanes, then yes, of course people are going to move across there and they are not going to expect you. Now, there is something called lane filtering. There are only 5 states that allow lane filtering, and those are Arizona, Colorado, Montana, Utah, and Minnesota. Each state is going to have their own rules and regulations around lane filtering, but generally lane filtering is going to happen on more service roads. It's not going to be on the interstate. So these are going to be slower roads, usually about 35 miles per hour or less. And filtering typically only takes place when traffic is completely stopped. So if you think about it, that filtering is traffic has stopped, we're at an intersection, and the motorcyclist is allowed to filter. And so be in between the cars, in between lanes, and filter their way up to the front so that they can keep rolling. This does not happen out on interstates, but it does happen on service roads. Any place where traffic can actually move across your lane can cause a left turn collision. And these ones can be really nasty because it's essentially you're T-boning. A motorcycle is going to T-bone a car, or the car ends up T-boning the motorcyclist. But those left turn collisions can be pretty serious. So here are a few things that you can do to prevent being a victim of a left turn collision. You want to focus on the wheels. If you're riding along and there's a vehicle maybe pulling out of a grocery store or a restaurant and they're trying to make a left-hand turn, they are going to have to pass over your lane and in front of you. Pay attention to their wheels. Do not look at their face. Do not get into this like, oh, they were looking straight at me. No, they were looking right over or right through you. They didn't even see you. Because the other piece is there might be a post right there, a light post, and it's so easy for a motorcyclist to hide behind a light post. It's incredible how easy it is for a motorcyclist to just disappear behind something as simple as a light post. So if you all of a sudden appear and that car is ready to move, then that can be the lead up to colliding with that car. So pay attention to their wheels. If those wheels are moving, that vehicle is moving. So you have a couple of different options. You either need to slow down and prepare yourself for an emergency stopping situation, or you can actually do a little bit of a weave, and that again moves your headlights so that you can become more visible. And hopefully, because you're keeping an eye on those wheels, if those wheels stop, that vehicle should have seen you. Now, there's no guarantee. You should always be prepared for that emergency braking situation. You can also cover the horn if you feel like that's going to be an appropriate way to respond to this vehicle potentially pulling out in front of you. You are not going to win that battle. Again, you are not going to win that battle. So you have to do whatever it is that's appropriate for that situation to prevent that left-hand collision. Now, another collision type is going to be getting rear-ended. Now, everyone can be someone who gets rear-ended, and you might be someone who has rear-ended. Again, I have done that when I was young. I was a teenager. I wasn't paying attention. I was distracted, and I hit someone in front of me. Fortunately, it was not a motorcyclist. It was a Mercedes, and she was not very happy with me. But what you can do as a motorcyclist to prevent or try to prevent being rear-ended is paying attention to what's going on behind you. So offset yourself from the taillights. You want to come off just a little bit because your little tiny taillight is generally going to be pretty small in comparison to the taillights that are on the car. So offset yourself just enough so that you stand out as another vehicle in traffic. Then what you want to do is you want to stay in gear. You want to stay in first gear. And yes, that means that you're going to have to be using your hand to pull the clutch in, because if you let go, then you're going to stall the vehicle. You just want to stay in gear. I see it so much where people throw themselves into neutral and then they just are sitting ducks. So if a car behind me is not coming to a stop, I will not have the time to pull the clutch in, put it in gear, and get the heck out of there. Now, you do also want to create enough space for you to have a safe exit. Sometimes your exits are going to get closed off just because other traffic comes in and it blocks your exits. But you want to make sure that you have enough space between the car in front of you and the front of your motorcycle. So that way, if there's someone behind you ready to come in on you, you can hopefully get out of there and not get sandwiched between both of those cars. And as mentioned before, with the lack of visibility and things that you can do to help make yourself more visible, if you add that additional light bar that either flashes or it illuminates when you put your brakes on, that can help you be seen because now you've just made yourself brighter. You can also move your body, throw an arm out, move your head around, move yourself so that there's motion that happens in front of them, because that might actually get a distracted driver to go, whoa, there's something there. And they're going to come to that stop before they come to you. Now, this one's always a little bit scary because it can happen, and it's similar to that of distracted drivers where you don't always know what's going on behind the wheel of a vehicle, and that's going to be impaired driving. This goes on the motorcyclist as well, but I want to talk about cars. If you see someone who is clearly impaired, they're doing the very typical kind of swerving in their lane, they're unpredictable, they're driving, whatever the case may be, the driving's erratic, the best thing that you can do is get out of there. And I don't necessarily mean just speeding on past them. Sometimes that's your only option. If you have the option to get off of the roadway and give some time and some space between you and that other vehicle, that might really be your best option to avoid an impaired driver, because they are going to do all kinds of things like unsafe lane changes. They might be speeding. They're going to take these ridiculous left-hand turns. Whatever it is, stay out of their way. They don't see anything out on the roads, and they're certainly not going to see a motorcyclist. Now, as far as a motorcyclist and being an impaired rider, motorcycling takes a tremendous amount of focus and balance. And if you are impaired in any way, and alcohol is going to be our most typical impairment, if you have one single drink, that can absolutely increase your probability of having a motorcycle crash. If you look at the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration's website, they actually have this really cool graph on there that shows you just the increase in the probability of having a motorcycle crash on one drink. So you go to dinner and you have a beer and you get on your motorcycle, you've just relaxed just enough. You've slowed down your reaction time just enough. You've maybe decreased your balance just enough for you to put yourself in a bad situation. So really keep that in mind when you're going out and you want to drink but you're on your motorcycle. Do you want to have a drink? Like anything, just get an Uber. And the last thing on this list is going to be poor road conditions. Sometimes you're just going to run into situations out on the road that can decrease your traction. If you decrease the traction, tires have nothing to hold on to. It's much easier to crash. Where like in a car, for example, you have 4. So even if 2 of them end up sliding out, you've got 2 other ones to hold you there. But on a motorcycle that requires balance, it requires traction, you lose traction on one or both of those wheels, and you're almost guaranteed to go down. So poor road conditions could be anything like a pothole, road construction, weather conditions. So like when the road gets wet, or maybe even debris that has fallen on the road, something that fell out of the back of a pickup. The only thing that you can do in that situation is change your path of travel and or change the style of riding that you're doing. So slowing down, maybe decreasing the lean in a turn, maybe trying to avoid hitting something like a pothole. All of these things can be prevented if you're keeping your eyes up, if you have the experience, if you have the ability to operate and control your motorcycle because you went and got proper training. You should be able to prevent any kind of crash based on road conditions. Now, I have had my own motorcycle crash because of poor road conditions. I actually was taking a turn through an intersection and I lost traction due to an unknown but very slippery something on the road. Now, intersections are really common places for collection of oil or transmission fluid or diesel fuel or something to be on that roadway. Intersections are typically also much darker, so it's hard to see where those spots are because there's such an abundance of all of that road grime. And I ended up losing traction and I went down due to something slippery on the road, which of course could be poor road conditions. So again, I just want to close this whole thing with some of these common causes for motorcycle crashes are really truly going to be out of your hands. However, a lot of them are in your hands, and it's about the choices that you're making. And it really has a lot to do with your inexperience and or inadequate training. For example, if you have never done an emergency braking drill, or you've even tried to do an emergency braking in a parking lot or out on a really empty road where no one else is around you, how do you think that you're going to be able to stop and stop effectively in a true emergency situation if you've never even practiced it? So something I like to challenge my students with is, if you're willing to ride at X miles per hour. So I always ask them, how fast have you ever gone? And they'll give me the number, and let's say it's 70 miles per hour. My question to them is, have you ever stopped at 70 miles per hour? It's daunting. It's scary. And you do need to have a tremendous amount of space to be able to do a drill like that. And so getting the appropriate training, going to the appropriate facility to be able to do something like that is critical for you to be able to know how to do an emergency braking, so that way when someone pulls out in front of you because they're going to do a left-hand turn, you know how to stop. So again, this is all on you, and you have the ability, absolutely have the ability, and you now have the knowledge to know what to look for and how to protect yourself out on the roadways. Thank you so much for listening to Two Track and Tarmac, my podcast dedicated to you, the adventure motorcycle rider. If you are enjoying this podcast, please consider subscribing and sharing it with a friend. If you'd like to have even more motorcycle related content, such as training videos, tutorials, and my monthly newsletter, you can find all of those on the Clear Moto Patreon page. Again, I really appreciate you listening to Two Track and Tarmac, and I look forward to having you in the next one.